Hello everyone and welcome to SplitSecond. My name is Sequeira and I'll be taking you through today's match. Before starting, we at SplitSecond want to thank everyone for your constant support and suggestions on all social media. You can continue to support us by sharing and liking this video, subscribing if you haven't yet, by becoming a patron, or simply by not ad blocking the ads for our videos. Due to the current global pandemic, we are back to self-quarantining and recording our matches digitally. This week, we are playing a second round with all new commanders from Commander Legends. I am playing a requested high-power Nevinyrral aristocrats. Brandão is playing Mons Archelos from cEDH TV. David is playing a list he calls Curious Pirates featuring Malcolm and Breeches. And Baal is playing his brew for a value self-mill/combo Araumi. Baal won the dice roll. He mulliganed once and has a somewhat flooded hand due to 4 lands. 2 islands, Underground River, and a Minamo. Imperial Seal could get him the value he needs, while Ventress Gargoyle steadily fills his graveyard for Araumi. He also has a Phantasmal Image, which could become literally any value engine on the table. I mulligan down to 6. My hand is on the playable side with Commander Tower and Swamp for lands, and a Vampiric Tutor to maybe get me fast mana, a land or some draw engine. Carrion Feeder is a good sack outlet with Nether Trader being recursible as needed. Animate Dead is a combo piece or good for overall value. I consider keeping Mind Slicer and going for a turn 3 discarding everyone's hands, but instead send it to the bottom of my library. Luis's first hand is pretty solid. He has 3 lands in Mystic Sanctuary, Nurturing Peatland, and Svilunite Temple. This makes it so that Burgeoning acts like an early game ramp tool. He has Llanowar Elves to help him cast his commander if he misses another land drop, Ramunap Excavator for loops or just getting fetches from his graveyard, and Tainted Pact to tutor for whatever he needs. He does lack in any type of interaction. David has a very interactive hand. Ancient Tomb and Arid Mesa let him cover his colors, while Pongify, Red Elemental Blast, a Braid, and Thieving Skydiver all interact with our board in meaningful ways. Finally, Glinthorn Buccaneer can actually loop with Malcolm as long as David is attacking, killing the table. Nothing to scoff at. Time for game 1 with these new commanders. Baal starts up with a turn 1 Underground River into an early Imperial Seal, searching for a Mesmeric Orb. His power play still makes all of us wonder. Since my hand is super cheap and awfully uninteractive, I play a Command Tower and cast a Sorcery Speed Vampiric Tutor for Angel's Grace. I'm racing over opposition agents and counter magic, preferring to get this out of the way ASAP. Luis's first turn is potentially more impressive as he plays a Nurturing Peatland and a Burgeoning. We wonder just how many lands he has in hiding as he passes. David, unlike me, isn't the least bit intimidated by agents or tutors, playing an Arid Mesa, triggering Luis's Burgeoning for a Svilunite Temple, and passing. Baal is feeling extra good about his tutor choices. He plays an island, triggering Burgeoning and letting Luis play a tapped Mystic Sanctuary into play. He casts Mesmeric Orb, knowing I'm about to mill my top deck. On my turn, I reveal just how much I was willing to bob someone's winning turn as I mill Angel's Grace. I then play a Swamp and cast Nether Trader, attacking Luis with it since he has the ad nows for sure. We'll take note that Luis might be missing the forced mana for his commander as he does not play a land from Burgeoning. On my end step, David cracks the Mesa for a Volcanic Island, respecting the agent. Luis laughs at our faces after milling for the Mesmeric Orb because, lo and behold, he top decks a Flooded Strand. He cracks it for an Underground Sea and casts Archelos, passing to David with 4 lands on turn 2. David plays an Ancient Tomb and passes fully open. Seeing as he could cast Malcolm, we all suspect some kind of interaction. It's time for Baal to open the social stack with some shuckles as, after milling, he plays a Minamo. This land can be used to untap Luis's Turtle if he tries to force Baal's stuff to come into play tapped. He has not yet achieved a lot of value in his graveyard, so he plays a Ventress Gargoyle to help himself find something like a Spellseeker before passing. I mill 3. Then, I play a Plains and attack Luis. On my second main, I decide to cast a sack outlet in Woe Strider, getting a goat in the process. I just need some payoff card to really start accruing value and thus pass the turn. Luis mills 4 and plays Verdant Catacombs for a Bayou. He moves on to play Squandered Resources. We see he might be close to accomplish something, and Luis decides to cast Tainted Pact on his main to try and win this turn. He is looking for something like Splendid Reclamation, which he could loop with his current board thanks to Archelos, Mystic Sanctuary enter untapped, and Nurturing Peatland. Unfortunately, he hits a win con first, Thassa's Oracle. So, he is forced to keep her instead. He confessed he's not very excited about Thoracle as he moves to combat and attacks David. David shows Luis that not going deep might have actually saved him as he Red Elemental blasts the turtle back to the command zone. With that, Luis passes. David mills for the orb and plays a mountain. He casts a Chrome Mox, exiling Fiery Cannonade. He actually passes once again completely open, and we're all a bit concerned at his willingness to just interact. Baal mills to the orb. He plays a Polluted Delta and cracks it for an Underground Sea. He passes, fully untapped, just like David. I also mill to the orb. Before drawing, I sacrificed my Nether Trader to the Woe Strider, scrying 1 to the bottom. I miss a land drop as my Strider scratches Luis. Then, I decide to join in on this fun little don't cast anything on your turn game, as I also pass with all my lands up and ready. On my end step, Luis taps his untapped land so he mills more with the orb. He then moves to his turn and casts a Ramunap Excavator, which could also help him out once Archelos is out. He plays a tapped Zagoth Triumph from his graveyard and casts Lanor Elves for good measure. David, however, isn't interested in Luis's fun as he casts Pongify on the poor Excavator once he moves to the end step. Unsatisfied, David also goes ahead and casts an Abrade on Baal's Mesmeric Orb since it's not accruing value just for one person. Baal considers his options, but he really values the Mesmeric Orb as he casts a Force of Will on the Abrade, exiling an Echo of Eons. David mills a bunch and casts Breeches on his turn. He moves to end step and Baal uses the Ventress Gargoyle to mill all of us. He also uses Minamo's activated ability on itself 3 times to further dig through his library. The milling continues as the orb triggers on Baal's untap. He proceeds to float 2 mana and play a Lotus Field, lamenting that Archelos isn't on the battlefield and untapped to exponentiate this land's value. He then casts a Phantasmal Image, getting himself a second flying 5/4. He moves to end step and I flash an Aven Mind Sensor, seeing everyone is pretty much tapped. The orb mills me a bunch more. I play a Sea of Clouds and attack Luis with the Mind Sensor before passing. Luis taps his untapped land to mill more cards once again. On his turn, the Sultai player simply casts his commander before passing. He is ready to try and repeat the feat he wanted to accomplish just a few turns ago. David mills. He casts Malcolm and attacks Baal with Breeches since the gargoyles can't block. He actually exiles the Demonic Consultation from Baal's top of the library, which was going to get milled anyway. Malcolm spawns a treasure and David moves to end step. Baal uses his untapped land to mill another with orb, and then all mill for the gargoyle's activated ability. The effort of dragging these cards from the top to our graveyards, you guys. Baal mills to the orb, plays an island and attacks me with both gargoyles, no longer looking to deny us of the top cards of our library at instant speed. I take the 10 damage like a pro. The Dimir player then plays a Talisman of Dominance and casts Araumi, considering he has a Gilded Drake in his graveyard. I mill to the orb once again, getting nothing out of it. Since I'm on the clock for 10 flying damage, I decide to cast Animate Dead on Baal's Gilded Drake. I use it to steal Baal's commander. My only sack outlet is on the line here, and I will need it for my commander next turn should I fail to find something to win through Araumi. I cast a Grim Monolith with a promising next turn to boot. I then pass. Luis mills. Then, checking the board, he sighs as he casts Assassin's Trophy on my Mind Sensor. I let it go and get myself an untapped swamp. Luis then casts Imperial Seal. Everything starts aligning for him to try and win. He gets himself a Demonic Consultation to the top. He sacrifices Nurturing Peatland to draw the Consultation. He sacrifices the Temple to generate double blue and casts Thassa's Oracle. The trigger enters the stack and he casts Demonic Consultation, telling us he's sorry that he can't try to win in a more exciting fashion. Everything resolves, he exiles his library and the Oracle does its thing. But if you thought that we'd let this end with a Consultation Oracle duo, we got a surprise for you. A second game. Let's get that one going. Baal won the dice roll once again, 2 for 2. This time around he has 4 lands still: Dagmar Salvage, Academy Ruins, Island, and Swamp. But better tools thanks to Buried Alive to tutor for up to 3 creatures, Wand of Vertebrae to self-mill, and Millikin to both self-mill and ramp. It's looking pretty together. I mulliganed to 6 for the second match, finding a Sea of Clouds and Vault of Champions for lands. Nether Trader found itself back into my hand, and with a sack outlet in Blasting Station. Stormscape Familiar is a pretty decent ramp in a mostly black and white deck, while Phantasmal Image is both combo piece or a way to get value. I sent Liliana the Last Hope to the bottom. I don't expect her to survive David's commanders. Louise's second hand isn't super powerful of itself. He has Wasteland, Witch's Cottage, and Tropical Island for lands. However, Splendid Reclamation is a solid card in his deck, while Rhystic Study on turn 2 thanks to Chrome Mox should help him get into a better place. Swan Song is very likely to become Chrome Mox's father, or just good protection / interaction if he finds himself something to pitch. David mulliganed once and kept his second hand. He has an island and a mountain, with Dockside Extortionist ready to ramp him towards something like Wheel of Fortune, should he not find a better play. Ophidian Eye is a combo piece, and Abrade is a familiar bit of interaction. Coercive Recruiter is a strictly better Zealous Conscript, which allows David to combo or just use it for the value triggers. Second match, start. Baal opens the game with an island and a Wand of Vertebrae, ready to get digging. Mine and Louise's turns are pretty uneventful as we both drop our lands and pass. Mine, a Vault of Champions from this new set, while Louise a tapped Witch's Cottage. David though isn't playing around. He drops an island and casts a top-decked Mana Crypt, allowing him for a turn 1 Malcolm to get those treasures going. He moves to End Step and Baal mills 1 with a wand, an Echo of Eons. On his turn, Baal drops a Swamp and casts Millikin. Unlike me and Luis, he's ready for any moon that comes his way. I get to play and drop Sea of Clouds. I cast Stormscape Familiar while covering my colors and making sure I have some cool potential should Baal wish to wheel early on. I pass. Luis drops a Tropical Island. He then casts Chrome Mox and gets himself a Rhystic Study. He's fully prepared to tax us. David loses the Crypt roll. He plays a mountain and casts a card meant to completely change the game's dynamic: Dockside Extortionist. Louise's study triggers and David decides he isn't getting any out of it. Dockside gives David 4 whole treasures and he uses one of those to cast Mystic Remora and further set his board dominance. He pays for the study once again, intent on keeping the lead. Moving to combat, Malcolm whacks at the Naus player, triggering for another treasure before David passes. We're all pretty behind compared to him. Baal mills himself on David's end step. He plays an Academy Ruins. He casts a Felwar Stone, millikining himself and giving a card to David. He proceeds to cast a Gilded Drake and further finance Louise's Rhystic Studies, attempting to take Malcolm from David and reduce his lead. David, however, has another plan. He casts a Braid on the Drake, Louise's Rhystic trigger getting him another card. The Drake dies and Malcolm remains on the battlefield untouched. Baal passes, not fully satisfied with the outcome. On my turn, I play a Silent Clearing. I cast Phantasmal Image, paying for the Rhystic Study. The table knows fully well what this image is going to copy, but David would rather keep his treasures for interaction, especially considering it's the difference between 7 and 9 treasures. I become the Booty Lord with my 9 treasures and crack 4 to cast a Blasting Station while paying for the Rhystic trigger and giving a card to David. The table suspects I might get Nevinyrral next turn, but otherwise lets things resolve. Stormscape Familiar slaps Luis and I pass. Luis plays Underground Sea and casts Archelos. He's not fully sure I'll bother go for my commander next turn, or perhaps has some protection. He passes to David. David's crypt is forgiving this time around and he pays to keep the fish out and about. David does not cast Breeches, meaning he is probably afraid I might just destroy the board. Instead, he plays a mountain and he attacks Luis with Malcolm and Baal with Dockside, getting himself 2 treasures. As Baal eloquently put it, Malcolm is a treasure Timna and he's racking up some nice value. Before David's turn is fully ended, Baal mills himself with the Vertebrae. Baal plays Dagmar Salvage, which, thanks to Archelos, enters the battlefield untapped. He uses Millikin to mill and generate mana, casting an Old Faithful. Mesmeric Orb. Rhystic Study does trigger, but Baal isn't about to let Luis get another card at his expense. David though draws from the fishy. On my turn, I am beyond convinced my intended play is never going to resolve, but what the heck. I mill for the orb and try to cast my commander, paying for the study much to my sadness. There are no responses, and so his ETB trigger enters the stack along with Blasting Station. I respond to it by sacrificing my commander to the station, triggering his Leave the Battlefield trigger. I pay for it, floating 1 black mana with my last treasure. David also floats a bunch of mana while Baal sadly mills Demonic Consultation, which could win with his Thassa's Oracle he drew before. Luis gets pinged by the station and the board is wiped. Once the board is cleared, 7 creatures die this turn, and so Nevinyrral's ATB trigger gives me a modest 7 zombie tokens to play with. I move to end step and David and I lose our floating mana. Not a bad turn at all. Luis isn't super happy that I blew the board. He plays a mirror pool and casts Crucible of Worlds, now looking at a recovery mode before passing to David. David plays a mountain and casts Breeches. He too, albeit with a full hand, is not in an amazing position. Baal gets to his turn and casts Spellseeker. He thinks for a bit but chooses to get a Vampiric Tutor to maybe get a Hull Breacher later, considering the Echo of Eons sitting in his graveyard. I untap and miss a land drop. However, I had a card just for this board state ready, Dovin Grand Arbiter. I use his Plus ability, which increases his loyalty for each of my creatures that deal combat damage to a player until end of my turn. I attack Luis for 10 damage with 5 zombies and Dovin gets to 9 loyalty, meaning I can ultimate next turn. I pass with my board dominance increasing further. Luis plays a Wasteland. Considering his Crucible, I am a bit concerned he might start blowing my lands, but Luis is actually looking to reach his commander instead. He passes fully untapped. We wonder if he has Adnals ready, although he can't go very deep because of my zombie army. David starts by attacking Baal with his Menacing Commander. Breeches triggers and gives David a Dimir Signet, which he casts to ramp up towards his own Izzet Signet. He moves to end step and Baal casts Vampiric Tutor for a Hull Breacher, looking to take our hands out with Echo of Eons. Baal untaps and passes. On my turn, I suspect Baal Tutor for either Hull Breacher or Opposition Agent. I ultimate Dovin, getting to look at the top 10 and picking Intuition, Exotic Orchard, and Animate Dead. My idea is that if neither Luis nor Baal is open for Opposition Agent, I can use Intuition to get myself a solid pile and urgent interaction. I play the Exotic Orchard and attack Luis for another 10 damage since he has the deck that needs to work less to win. He takes the damage and flashes Hull Breacher. Baal opens a hidden stack to groan about this particular play. Luis plays a Swamp and casts his commander Archelos. He wants one more turn to try and do his thing, but his life total is really tight. He passes to David. David's turn starts with the recasting of Malcolm to try and really get some value from combat. He attacks Baal with Breeches once again, triggering it and Malcolm. He exiles a Call of the Death Dwellers, which he cannot cast, nor does he want to. David moves to end step and Baal's Hull Breacher also comes out. I use this opportunity to cast Intuition. I do dirtle the pile a bit as I get Phyrexian Altar instead of learning Relic Warder since I had Blasting Station in my graveyard. I also find myself a Sevin's Reclamation to try and win if I get another land. The third card is a Swords to Plowshares, which can make Baal's Echo of Eons plan even more awkward should he have removal for Luis's Hull Breacher. David gives me the swords after a discussion on whether that should be given or Sevin's. Luis sternly warns against Sevin's, and so I get the spot removal. Baal untaps. He casts a Demonic Tutor for Yawgmoth's Will to try and win next turn, while making me wonder whether he went for counter magic or spot removal, in case I try to either win with Sevin's or remove his Hull Breacher. Baal moves to end step. I decide to cast Swords to Plowshares on Luis's commander. He tried very hard to go for Archelos rather than something else, and his commander also helps him defend against my army. This way, there's still 2 Hull Breachers on the board and we're less intimidated by Echo of Eons, for now. On my turn, I do not find a land. I cast a Kalida's Trader of Get. It resolves, so I plus Dovin and attack Luis with 6 zombie tokens. He takes 12 and I get Dovin back to 9 loyalty. This also makes me a lot less afraid of Baal wheeling. I pass the turn to Luis. Luis is in the proverbial corner. He plays a strip mine and casts a Gilded Drake to swap for my Kalidas, not really having many options here. He passes to David, hoping he can make it. David plays a Fiery Islet. He goes to combat and attacks Luis with Malcolm while Breeches goes at Baal, in his hopes to find something that can help him stop the Echo of Eons from destroying us or my Reclamation from winning. He actually finds 2 cards, a Scavenging Ooze from Luis and an Ashiok Dream Render from Baal. Don't let your dreams be dreams, David. He casts Ashiok, using it to mill Baal and exile all our graves. There goes my Sevin's pile and Baal's last 2 tutor turns. Not done yet, David does cast Scavenging Ooze before passing. Because of how the game played out, Baal is in a pretty bad spot. He plays his Soul Ring and attacks his own Ashiok under David's control with Hullbreacher. The Ashiok is sent down to 1 loyalty and Baal casts his commander, Araumi, on his second main. He has no graveyard, but he does have a plan, the Buried Alive in his hand, which just requires Ashiok to die. I untap and play a freshly drawn Ancient Tomb, which is just what I needed. I attack Luis with his own Gilded Drake, attempting to take him out of the game. Damage connects and we have our first casualty. Luis will be sadly missed. Gilded Drake and Scavenging Ooze are both exiled while I get back Kalidas from the Sultai commander. On my second main, I innocently cast an Altar of Dementia. It does resolve, so I move 2 more serious plans. A Mind Slicer. David tells me that I don't need to cast him at all. He's even going to wheel next turn after, quote, dealing with the Hullbreacher. I reply with a thanks but no thanks and sacrifice the Mind Slicer, targeting David to mill 4. He responds though and casts the Fiery Cannonade he's been saving up in case my brain-eating army went this way. I also respond, sacrificing the zombies and milling David for 14 while taking note of the cards he put into his graveyard. The Cannonade resolves and Baal's Spellseeker is exiled by Kalidas, giving me a zombie. Hullbreacher, ironically, survives because of his pirate status. We discard our hands. Now, I activate David's ultimate to find myself 3 cards from the top 10, looking to amass a winning trio. I find Dance of the Dead, Vespalark, and Gilded Drake. I pass to David, not too bothered about Ashiok even if it gets used. David starts his turn by attacking me and Baal, not too worried about Dovin now that my army is down. I exile a Swamp, while Baal exiles a Flusterstorm and Malcolm creates 2 treasures. David plays my Swamp. He does not activate Ashiok, thinking Baal might want to keep it around since it stops me from tutoring. On his turn though, Baal top decks a Leveler, but he's 1 blue mana short from winning with Araumi by bringing back Thassa's Oracle. He goes ahead and kills Ashiok in case he hits the land he needs. Baal then passes to me. On my turn, I play a Plains and move towards wrapping things up. I cast Dance of the Dead on David's Imperial Recruiter and find myself a Leonin Relic Warder. I cast it and it exiles the dance, making me sacrifice the Recruiter, which is exiled by Kalidas. Now I evoke Vespalark for Zulaport Cutthroat, getting it back onto the battlefield. With this, I am able to sacrifice the Leonin and get Dance of the Dead back to the battlefield, reanimating the Leonin. I do these enough times to kill Baal while milling myself. Once Baal is dead, David sacrifices the Fiery Islet, making me pray that he does not have a response. He doesn't. As such, I take David out with the combo as well. Good game. Thank you for joining us for today's matches, everyone. We got to show you guys more Commander Legends boys, with the 3 colored commanders, Archelos and Nevinyrral, achieving victory. We'd like to start the credits by thanking our current patrons and especially Izanagi, Stefan, TJ Rapp, Mike Purr, Ajimo, Iglegal, Heated Shield, Drunken Housecat, and LL Coolrat, our stag riggers. If you want to go through other Commander adventures, click one of the videos on the right. If you want to talk with us about our games or other EDH related matters, join us on Discord. Come with us again next week for a new set of commanders and more decisive plays. See you all then.